What's up, and welcome into the Bork Report here on Bork News Network. As always, I am your host, Bork, and today got a fun episode for you. Going to be talking a little about the Nintendo Switch, not the Switch 2, but the Nintendo Switch as we lead up to the announcement, the official direct here on April 2nd. I just want to kind of talk through some of the stuff that's defined the Nintendo Switch system. And before I do that, just got a couple things to say on how today's been going. My Lord, I went to this morning, every Saturday morning, I try and go play pickleball. And I got the hiccups while playing pickleball, couldn't get rid of them. I drank water, held my breath. And my God, it is incredibly debilitating to be playing any sport and have the hiccups because you'll be running and then your whole body will basically convulse because you hiccup. And my gosh, it was just not the best day of pickleball after that. It was probably a solid 20 or 30 minutes of pickleball of my 2 hours with the hiccups, and I just couldn't get anything rolling. So that was something. As well, some news this week as far as some things I've done since last week. Couple things. I did go out and purchase myself a Nintendo DS Lite. It is gorgeous. It's not in the best condition, but it only cost me $40. And it's in really, solid condition considering. And I got a red case as well as a little red mini case with that as well. So that was a good purchase this week. Really excited about that. As well, earlier in the week, I went out and found a guy in Marketplace who was selling Black and Black 2. I won't tell you how much I spent on those because those games are a little pricey. I did spend under the price charting, amounts that are typically sold, and they both had boxes. So that's a big win. So big win to get those. I've been just in such a Pokemon centric mood lately that, sorry, that's all I talk about sometimes, but it's just been kind of my little reprieve from life. And, video games are fun and Pokemon is fun. So I don't care if I talk about it too much, but really excited about that. My ultimate goal is to be able to freely transfer Pokemon from my Game Boy Advance up to the Nintendo Switch. So now I have the DS Lite. For that, I can connect the cartridge to the bottom as well as the DS cartridge and transfer Pokemon from Fire Red, Leaf Green up into, Heart Gold. From Heart Gold, I can take it to Black 2. So really excited about that. And then from Black 2, obviously, to Poke Transporter and Pokemon Bank. So fun purchases this week, but outside of that, some other housekeeping. I did not post any TikToks, YouTube Shorts, or anything like that this week. I do intend on doing so with this episode. I think I've got a couple really nice 2 to 3 minute segments that I can pull from. So you can expect a couple of those. I'm going to take some time tomorrow to just skim through this video and edit a couple TikToks to post. Again, if you haven't already, feel free to follow me on TikTok at GameBork. Very simple. Just type that in, give me a follow, and feel free to interact with my videos as you see them coming up this week. Outside of that, we'll continue posting on Saturdays here. I know last week was a little bit of a delay since I was out of town, but should be good to post every Saturday going forward here for the next couple weeks. And with that being said, I'm just going to jump into the episode because, like I said, I want to get this rolling, and I've got some fun things to talk about. Today, I'm going to be talking about the games that most clearly, in my mind, defined the Nintendo Switch. And I'm going to say these are going to just be Nintendo first-party titles, and they're going to be games that I've played. So I'm not going to try and talk about a game I haven't played. There's some honorable mentions that I haven't played that I'll just mention and get out of the way now. Metroid Dread, it's up on my list. It'll be coming here soon. Outside of that, I know I'm not a big Fire Emblem person, but Three Houses is, really certainly a game that would be on a lot of people's lists if they were to list their top 10 games that define the Nintendo Switch system. So wanted to get those two out of the way. The rest of these here, I would say, are pretty, I wouldn't say unanimous. I think another honorable mention is Luigi's Mansion 3, a game that I watched my girlfriend play all the way through, but I personally just have not beaten it. That's another honorable mention because I know a lot of people really associate that game with the Nintendo Switch, and they had a really fun time playing it. But just a couple other things I appreciated about the Nintendo Switch outside of Nintendo first party is that it was a huge catalyst in the indie world and the indie developer world because, I would say indie games are obviously a popular thing before the Nintendo Switch, but the Switch was such an inviting platform. You can play it on the go. It feels like a home console. You can plug it into your TV and just take it with you wherever you want. I think that was super awesome, and really appreciate the Nintendo Switch for that. Animal Crossing is one that, or not Animal Crossing, Stardew Valley is one that I'll really name there as far as an indie game that I played a lot. Some other ones I had fun with on the Nintendo Switch are like Crypt of the Necro Dancer. I know this is Nintendo published, but it's a launch title as well. Snipper Clips, I'd consider that kind of indie-ish. A lot of really fun games on the Nintendo Switch, and pretty much any indie that you can think of is probably on the Nintendo Switch at this point, or will be coming to the Switch too. So it's pretty cool. That's an awesome thing that the system did. Without further ado, I'll jump into my top 10 list of games that I played that I really feel like have defined the Nintendo Switch system. I've got the boxes for 9 of them. My friend's borrowing one of them, so I don't have the box for that one. But at number 10, it's not a game I would say I'm in love with, and I've never really been in love with the style of this game, but Super Mario Bros. Wonder is my number 10 game. I think the reason I never really liked 2D Marios is because they really were pumping out the same kind of game for about 10 to 15 years between the Wii and the Wii U. That new Super Mario Bros. 3D, Wii, all of that. It felt very samey to me, so I never really got into it. But Super Mario Bros. Wonder kind of just takes that whole thing and flips it on its head. I think that just the Wonder Seed mechanic and basically every level having this gimmick and kind of a unique gimmick at that is something that is really awesome, and made this game much more tolerable to someone like myself who is not a huge 2D Mario fan. I've always been a 3D Mario guy. So really appreciate what that game did. Just the weirdness of it, the creativity, the emotions on Mario are really important as well for me, because I feel like in the old, new Super Mario Bros. Games, he just was kind of emotionless. So really appreciate what they've done with it. I hope they keep a similar art style going forward, a similar charm. But that's my number 10 as far as games that I feel like have really defined the Nintendo Switch for me. Number 9, maybe a controversial take, depending on what your thoughts are on what I should consider for this list and not. I've never played number 2 or 3 in this series. Those games maybe at some point I'll get to, but Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition is going to be my number 9. I played this last year, or it was last year, and holy hell, I really, really enjoyed this game. I think this game personally might be in my top 10 to 20 games all time. I don't know. I'd have to really think about it. But I just was extremely awestruck at how much this game gripped me after a certain point. I played it back when it released in 2020 for about 10 to 15 hours, and I didn't get hooked. Plus, Animal Crossing and a few other things were really taking up my time that year. But this game has a lot of heart. The characters are incredible. The upscaled visuals compared to the Wii version are really, really good. And then one of the most unique combat systems I've ever had to play in a video game, just like the positioning of, where you put your character, where you kind of position the other characters, kind of how you sync with certain characters. Shulk, Rhine, Fiora, Dunban, like the cast of characters really bounces off each other super well. I'm not going to get super in depth on Xenoblade because I did talk about it in one of my previous episodes, but it's an incredible game, and it's definitely one of those games that as I sunk 60, 70, 80 hours into it, I'm like, this game really means something to me at the end of the day. So that's my number 9. Going into number 8, a really fun game. I played many games in this series over the years, but I'm going to say that the Nintendo Switch version and them taking the step into kind of a more 3D environment is really, really cool. That being Kirby and the Forgotten Land. I know Kirby's been rendered in 3D plenty of times before. It's never just been a 2D series, but kind of the level design in this game is super cool. The abilities feel really good in a 3D environment. There's fun little mini games to do here and there. There's a fishing mini game. I love fishing mini games. And then just the kind of mode in the big mouth, big Kirby mode where you suck up big things and do big things with those, whether it's a car, a vending machine. Very, very fun mechanic. Really fun game to play overall, and just, really one of those games I look back on really fondly with the Nintendo Switch. Now, at number 7, I don't have the box for this one. As I said, a friend is borrowing it, but Pokemon Legends Arceus is going to be my number 7. Really just flip-turned what the Pokemon formula could be and just kind of slammed it down on its head. People, I feel like at this point in the Nintendo Switch life cycle, we're getting a little tired of what Pokemon was doing. It's, obviously Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee had come out. We had Sword and Shield, which I think are really fun games. I really like them, but I get the critiques. And the formula of Pokemon just kind of felt stale after 8 generations. So Pokemon Legends Arceus came in and just really enlivened the series and made me feel like I was playing Pokemon for the first time, which is really, really special. Just the ability to go freely catch Pokemon as you see them, just throw a ball at them. You don't have to engage in battle. Just the quick moment-to-moment gameplay. The shiny hunting in this game is extremely, really fun. It's awesome. Really good ways to hunt. Pretty good odds, yet not so good that it's just like unforgivingly easy. You're not going to get a shiny every time you boot up the game, but really fun game to play. Overall, just really enjoyed that the Pokemon Company has seen that, and they're like, yeah, we're going to keep doing this. Legends ZA obviously will come out this year, and I hope many, many more Legends games in the future. Just kind of reiterating and kind of rehashing this formula and making it new each time as well. I'm very excited to see what Legends ZA does and really kind of go from there. But that's going to be my number 7. And this next one at number 6 might be controversial. And I think it is a defining game on the Switch in the sense that it probably should be higher. But in the sense of the games that I have above it, I think that those ones, to me, feel more defining than this one. And I'm going to go with Tears of the Kingdom at number 6. And I'll reiterate and state right now that at number 6, you might think I'm crazy. And that's a valid take. I think it is better than Breath of the Wild in almost every way. I like it more than Breath of the Wild in every way, but I put Breath of the Wild higher up on this list because I think when I think of the Switch, I think of me standing out in the cold in March for 3-4 hours ahead of the launch of the Switch, getting it at midnight, taking it back to my dorm room in college, and playing for about 4 or 5 hours until about 5 in the morning. And just I don't think I had classes that Friday, which was a bonus. So it's a really fond memory. And just the first time playing Breath of the Wild was such a cathartic experience, and playing it on this system that I could plug it into my TV, or I want to get cozied up in bed, I can take it out of the system. It was such a novel concept that I'll never not think of Breath of the Wild higher. And I'll talk about Breath of the Wild more. I feel like I'm yapping about the wrong game here. Tears of the Kingdom is everything Breath of the Wild was and more. It changes the power-ups. It changes the dynamics of how things work. The Ultra Hand and the Fuse abilities are some of the coolest abilities in any video game. The physics system gets improved even more from Breath of the Wild. The Ascend ability in this game, being able to go into a cave, decide I don't want to be in this cave anymore, and just ascend out of it and come up on top of the cave in the overworld, is incredible. The ability to have a map of the sky, and nobody knew this before the game launched, but the depths are just absolute master classes of figuring out what we can get away with not telling the fans before we launch a game, because I think everyone's first reaction is like, I want to jump down that hole. They see a chasm and they're like, I'm going to jump down it. And you think something bad's going to happen or it's going to void you out, but you keep going, and then it has the music as you descend, and you're like, it's not booting me out. It's not killing me. And you land in the depths and you find out that there's an entire map underneath there. Maybe you have complaints about there not being enough to do down there, but I think that the monster variety down there, the gloom, the light roots, all of that really connected with me, and I love checking things off a list, and that felt like checking things off a list to the highest degree, with 120 some light routes and shrines and things like that to do. So number 6, a lot of people would have that higher. A lot of people would put it above Breath of the Wild. I'll talk more on Breath of the Wild again. I feel like I already gave my spiel about that game, but I have plenty more to say. Trust me. But we'll jump on to number 5 here on my list. We're about halfway through my list. Number 5, as far as games I think that defined the Switch generation, is going to be Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. And I know a lot of people are going to say, well, that was a Wii U game. So was Breath of the Wild, which is going to be higher on this list. But I don't consider Mario Kart 8 Deluxe a Wii U game in the slightest. I think obviously it takes all of the courses from that, but it really enhances the visuals. It enhances the experience. And then to boot, 5 years into the Switch's life cycle, they're like, hey, by the way, here's 48 more courses, which really made it its own game in a way. So the booster expansion pass for Mario Kart 8 Deluxe was just incredible. I think that the mechanics in this game are some of the most solid in any Mario Kart ever. Maybe, I would say probably the most solid mechanics. And definitely my favorite Mario Kart game ever at this point. I've played so many hours. I've done the time trials. I've done everything there is to do in this game, and yet I still find myself playing it from time to time. So I'll put that at number 5. At number 4, this is probably not much of a surprise to anybody. If you guys are going to, kind of consider the cultural impact of the Switch, you can't deny COVID-19 happening. And in that same sense, you can't deny the impact that Animal Crossing New Horizons had on the Nintendo Switch family of systems. During the pandemic, I think I put 300 plus hours into that game in 2020 alone. It came out at the perfect time. At that point in time, I had been interning at my job and had gotten my hours cut to about 10 hours a week. I didn't know what the hell to do. I couldn't get a second job because no one was hiring because it was a pandemic. I was living at home with my parents, and this was just such a good escape from life. I just can't thank this game enough for the time that it came out in. And I think it's really special. I think, I've never played New Leaf on the 3DS. A lot of people say it's better, and I understand the critiques against this game. And maybe I did play it too much. Maybe it didn't deserve to be played that many hours by me, but I think they updated it enough. There were a couple major updates. There was a DLC expansion. Excuse me, I'm going to take a drink of water here. And they did enough with, supporting events and holiday seasons, and it really felt like a community event every time they did something here. I was looking up online. I was going to people's islands. People were coming to mine. I was trying to sell my stocks at the turnips. Really, really cool game. I don't know if I'll ever find myself going back to New Horizons at this point. I think I'll just wait until the next Animal Crossing gets released, and then I'll probably put hundreds of more hours into that one. But I think my time has ran out on Animal Crossing New Horizons. I've started a new island a couple times. Really enjoyed doing that every time. I think that that's kind of the most fun part of the game is those, first, trying to earn your 5-star island or trying to earn your 3-star island to get KK Slider there. After that point, still plenty to do, still plenty of fun to have, but I think that the gameplay loop gets a little old in this game. It doesn't really give me a reason to come back every day outside of just doing chores, which I do chores in my real life, and I don't know why a video game would make me want to do that, but for a time in 2020 when I had nowhere else to go, that was exactly what I needed. So I don't think many people could deny that as the number 4 on my list here. Some people might put that as 3, 2, or 1 on their list, and I would not bat an eye. But certainly I think if anyone is making a top 10 list and they've played that game, it's kind of got to be on your top 10 list. 3, 2, and 1 on my list, I think could go in pretty much any order, and I wouldn't say boo to any of that. My number 3 is going to be Super Mario Odyssey. And again, I think this game could be number 2 or 1, and I really considered putting it above a couple of these other games here. At this point, you probably know where I'm going with what games I'm selecting, but I think that Super Mario Odyssey is one of those special games that even if there is a better Mario game in the future, I don't know if a Mario game is going to capture that magic and imagination. And I'm saying this, and I know I'm going to be proven wrong whenever the Switch 2 Mario game gets released, but just this game took everything about game mechanics and made everything about those fun. Hey, you want to be a dinosaur? Go capture a dinosaur and go wreck things around the map. Hey, we've got these enemies that have been in Mario games for, 30 plus years now. How about you take your hat, capture them, and then you can be those enemies? How about we give you some of the tightest platforming there's ever been? The movement just registers so perfectly when you're playing as Mario. It feels so good. And that's where I get a game like, I give Astrobot a 10 out of 10. I think Astrobot controls really well, but it's nothing compared to the fluidity that you have as Mario and all of the abilities you have with the cap. Being able to throw it, bounce off it, capture things, wall jump, backflip, triple jump. There's so many platforming mechanics in this game that just work super well that I can't believe it's on the Nintendo Switch, honestly. Like, I know the Switch is plenty powerful for what that game needed it to be, but it just feels crazy. And I haven't even gone into the level design. Like, all of the worlds are incredibly well designed in the Super Mario Odyssey, whether it's New Donk City, Cascade Kingdom. I think the Luncheon Kingdom is one of the coolest kingdoms in the game. And just, I think a lot of people might complain about how many moons there are, and it kind of dilutes the experience compared to like a game like Galaxy or Sunshine, where there's 120 shines or 120 stars to find. But I think it's one of those things where they just want you coming back into the game. You don't need to get every single moon, but we want you to be able to open the game and have something to do. And I think that that's super special. I don't know if they decide to keep doing that for future games. I hope they do, because I just like that little collectathon aspect of the game. And certainly, I wouldn't be upset if they went back to the traditional, hey, here's 120 shines or shines or stars, and you get them throughout, 7 or 8 main levels. If that's how they want to do it, fine. But I just think that this is such a solid game design. Very kid-friendly, very adult-friendly, very just fun. So that is my number 3. I think, you guys probably couldn't argue that it should be lower, and maybe you could. But I think that there's no way that Mario Odyssey is anything under number 3 on this list. Now, number 2 is going to be one of the greatest video games of all time as far as ambition. And it's one of those games that celebrates video games better than anything that will ever come out, probably ever again. And that is going to be Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Super Smash Bros. Ultimate is just a love letter to video games. It's a love letter to Nintendo, but also they said, hey, we're not just Nintendo, baby. We got third-party, IPs up the wazoo. We've got DLC characters from, brands and companies that you would never expect to be in a Nintendo game. The fact that they got Banjo-Kazooie back, the fact that they got Joker from Persona, Solid Snake, I still can't believe this video game exists, and it came out in 2018 and had such a good longevity. It's still obviously being played to this day, and I don't know how the Smash Bros. Series follows up this game outside of just kind of rebooting the series, bringing in new moves, new characters, new stages, and kind of just resetting the formula of what Smash Bros. Is. Secondarily to that, maybe Smash Bros. Is just going to continue building off of Ultimate, and they release it on every system, and they just keep adding characters, keep adding new stages. Maybe that's the route they go. I don't really know. I don't want Smash Bros. Ultimate to end, but I do want to see something new. But that's besides the point. I'm rambling on some Smash Bros. Stuff that is not indicative of the conversation at hand. This game is the Nintendo Switch. It is a game that was only released on the Switch. It was meant and built and perfected for the Switch. That kind of grab and go mentality of being able to take your system with you, play on the go. Or you can plug it into your TV. You can connect your GameCube controller and play with that, which is my preferred way to play. It and just the ability of Masahiro Sakurai to get all of the characters that have ever been in a Smash Bros. Game back in, the ability to get those third-party IPs. That trailer, Everybody Is Here, is one of the greatest video game trailers of all time, because you expect to just see a pretty good roster of characters. You expect to see a lot of returning characters, but then you see Sonic appear, you see Snake appear, and then suddenly you're like, oh shoot, this is big, this is huge. And then at the end it says Everybody Is Here. Oh my god, just chills. And number 2 as well on this list, I feel like it could be number 1 just for the fact that it had such a chokehold on every Nintendo announcement for like 4 or 5 years. There was never a Nintendo Direct that went by where people weren't expecting the next character to get announced. Speculating. I think it's probably the most speculated game of all time, as far as, people trying to figure out who they're going to go with next in the DLCs, trying to figure out in what direction this game goes as far as the competitive scene. But just character reveals in this game will never be topped except by another Smash Bros. Where we get similar hype levels. And if the Switch 2 lives up to the Switch 1, then certainly I could see those hype levels growing. But it just felt like such a moment in time to be living through the Smash Bros. Ultimate era. And that's why it's number 2 on my list. It's also probably the game I've put the most hours into on the Nintendo Switch. I'd have to check, but it's probably getting close to 1,000 hours played. It's definitely over 600. And I've alluded to this already. I am down to my last game, number 1 on my list. And at this point, I don't think you guys have any questions about what it's going to be, considering I mentioned that it would be on this list earlier, and I have not talked about it since. It is definitely Breath of the Wild for number 1 on my most iconic Nintendo games list. And it just has to be for all the reasons I mentioned earlier. It was the launch title for the Nintendo Switch. Who cares if it came out on Wii U? I'm not going to knock it for that. It is definitively, in my mind, the Nintendo Switch game. And like I said, I waited out in the cold. It was like 10 degrees outside for 3-4 hours outside of a Best Buy in Iowa City to get this. I got it at midnight. I got the Neon Joy-Con version. I got Breath of the Wild. I didn't really have the money to do so. I was spending money I had, but I probably shouldn't have been spending. And then I got my ass back to my dorm by like 1 a.m., booted it up, played for about 3 or 4 hours until 5 in the morning, and then fell asleep for a few more hours, woke back up in the morning, ate breakfast, and then played that game all Friday. It was such a moment in history. I still can't believe this game exists. And obviously Tears of the Kingdom, I mentioned earlier, as a better video game, and I like Tears of the Kingdom more, but it was more of the same as compared to Breath of the Wild. Was a complete shakeup of the Zelda formula as we know it. It was definitively the most ambitious game I've ever played up until that point. As far as like, as I was playing it, I was like, I don't know how this exists. The map was huge. There was good enemy variety at the time. Obviously, it doesn't feel as good now with Tears of the Kingdom being out. The story was not there as far as like the most impactful story ever, but that was not what the point of the game was. It was complete and utter freedom. They dropped you into a map and said, what do you want to do? You answer to them and they say, okay, go do it. We don't care. We know that this is an objective you can do, but we don't care if you go over here and do this objective instead, or you get distracted along the way. That's kind of the whole point of Breath of the Wild, is to play the game and get distracted. I think that first night when I played for 4 or 5 hours, I didn't even get to Kakariko Village because I was doing shrines. I kept getting distracted by little things. I kept enjoying and admiring the environment. And it was one of those games where I didn't care if I was ahead of the curve and discovering anything first, because I could tell so immediately that this game was going to be one of those where everyone's going to enjoy it differently and everyone's going to have their own unique experience. With that being said, there's no video game on this list that makes me think of the Nintendo Switch more than Breath of the Wild. It is by far and away the game that most people will associate with the Nintendo Switch. In some capacity, it'll be guaranteed on anyone that's played its top 5 list of games that they associate with the Nintendo Switch. Not necessarily their favorites or the best, but it's hard not to associate a game like this with the Nintendo Switch and say that it is a defining video game of the era. It is one of my favorite games of all time. It is one of my favorite video game experiences of all time. And with that being said, it is definitively my number 1 video game on this list. So to recap, just going back from 10 to 1, just so you guys see that and hear it again, we have Super Mario Bros. Wonder. We have Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition. So we got Super Mario Wonder, Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, Kirby and the Forgotten Land. I don't have the box for it, but Pokemon Legends Arceus number 7. We got Tears of the Kingdom, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, Animal Crossing New Horizons, Super Mario Odyssey, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, and my number 1, Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. That is my list of top 10 games that define the Nintendo Switch era for me. And I say all of this as we are about 2.5 weeks away from the April 2nd Nintendo Direct. We've got about 16, 17, 18 days until the Nintendo Switch Direct at this point. And I can't even express to you how excited I am. I want to reiterate, and maybe not reiterate, I've never said this, but the Nintendo Switch was the first system I feel like I personally bought and owned for myself. Any other system I had previously bought was either my parents buying it for me, or, you know, I would have to save up money and then my dad would have to drive me to the video game store to buy it, or something along those lines. The Nintendo Switch was the first time I kind of broke loose of the chains. I didn't feel like I had the money for this system at the time. I probably shouldn't have spent it. I'm doing fine now, but I made the conscious decision that this is a moment in history. The Nintendo Switch is going to be the next big thing. I want one on launch day. I waited out in the cold for 3 or 4 hours, was second in line because I did that. It was about 10 degrees in Iowa City that day. And by God, every bit of the last 8 years has been worth it. The Nintendo Switch is not even probably, it is definitively my favorite video game console of all time. I have a very special affinity towards it, and that's why I wanted to talk about it. I'm sure in the next episode or two, I will probably be mentioning more stuff about the Nintendo Switch, and as we lead into the Nintendo Switch 2's launch, it's going to be talked about a lot, but hell yeah, man. I love video games. The Nintendo Switch, more than any system ever, made me realize that. And these 10 games that I talked about today are huge reasons why. So I'm glad you guys stuck around. If you've made it this far, please feel free to like, subscribe, ring the bell, and leave a comment. Let me know what your favorite Nintendo Switch games are. What did I not put on this list? If I didn't put it on the list, it's probably because I did not play it, or maybe it just didn't make my top 10. And again, these are only Nintendo published games. So nothing that was third party would have made this list in any world. Not that I don't have games from third party publishers or developers that wouldn't deserve this list, because there are. But yeah, I really hope you enjoyed this episode. Really fun talking. It went a little bit longer than I expected. I didn't expect to talk about it for 34 minutes, but here we are. Really appreciate it. As always, I am Bork from Bork News Network. This is the Bork Report, signing off.